Bonjour à tous, je suis Jérémy d'Innovation Time et aujourd'hui nous sommes dans une série de podcasts très spéciale d'interviews avec les finalistes du Prix Stratégis organisé par la HE. Aujourd'hui je suis spécialement en compagnie de Sylke, de la start-up SUN Bioscience, l'une des 5 finalistes, une start-up qui a été fondée en 2016 et qui est incubée à l'EPFL. On parlera donc d'essais pharmaceutiques avancés et qui sont cruelty-free, si on peut se le permettre de dire, il me semble. Et donc, Sylke, est-ce que tu peux nous parler un petit peu de ton parcours?
So now I can switch to
Yeah. In English.
Okay. Okay.
Tell us a
So my name is Sylke. I originally come from Germany. I did my studies at ETH in Zurich. I wanted to study biotechnology, so that's how my path got me there. And then really during my studies I was extremely interested in stem cells. It was not available at that time in Zurich, so that what brought me what many people say the other way around, across the Röstigraben. So not many people apparently come from Zurich to Lausanne, but that's how I ended up here. And I did my studies here, mainly in stem cell bioengineering. It's where I met my co-founder and really where we developed the technology, which is the basis of our company right now.
And what was your initial personal motivation to go into biotechnology and microorganisms?
Well, actually, I was fascinated from biology from the beginning, but it's really also one of the future really big fields in this world. So anything that touches healthcare is of extreme need. Because just the world is growing so much and there's so many new diseases.
So at some point you created your own startup.
Yeah.
What was the motivation of creating something new? Was it something that you planned all along, that at some point, instead of doing full-time research, you wanted to actually build a company? Or was it something that just happened just like this?
So there's two different answers really. My co-founder will say something completely different to me. For her, it was always the dream of making a startup and growing something big from the beginning on. It was just, I've seen so many technologies even before my PhD that just ended up in a drawer or just ended up in a publication, where it's sometimes really sad because they do bring value, and that's something that we didn't want to do from the beginning on. So we created something, actually people started liking it from the beginning, and then we're like, okay, we'll bring it to market, we'll make a product out of it, and we'll grow a company out of it. So.
And how was this decision, and when did it happen in your time? Was it something where did it happen? In a lab or actually just around the table? How did you meet your co-founder?
Well, she was part of my lab, so it was really, we were working on a side project, both of us together. And then we basically started working 24/7 together and trying to find a solution for, scaling organoids for screening. That's how we really founded the basis of the team. But it was when we had a first prototype and we started sending it to a lot of collaborators around working on different organoid models, so these small tissues that we grow in the lab. And having their feedback saying this stuff is working, it's great, we want more. And then we kind of had our mini site production during our PhD, creating these little plates, which was something completely different to what we actually had to do. And then it was like, yeah, we have to bring it together. So then we founded the startup.
What was it that you actually had to do for your PhD? How was it different from what you ended up with?
Yeah.
For your startup?
So we both had different projects actually. It was just I was working on a specific tissue model to create a 3D tissue model out of it. So the tech behind was not really, it helped in the end, but it was not something that was core to the project, and very similar with Nathalie.
Okay. And so, was it your first entrepreneurial adventure? Maybe have you been part of some student association in the past, or maybe some side also project that you had during your studies, or was it your first?
Well, it was my first in that scale, but when I was younger, I was helping with my mother's. She has these non-for-profit organizations, so I was helping there. I was helping out. And during my studies, we actually founded the biology student club at ETH Zurich, so I was involved in that one too, but completely different to what this experience is like. So.
And how was it different? Did it help you in some way, or how do you compare being part of an organization and your parents' work compared to your own project with SUN Bioscience now?
Yeah, well, quite honestly, the stakes are completely different. You know, this is becoming your life a bit. It's something that you created. It's a bit your baby, and you don't want to see it fail, obviously. So, you know, you invest so much time and effort. It's you love it, so you do it. And then just in terms of, I think, what we had as experience when we founded the company towards what we've learned in the past 4 years is just, yeah, it's a path.
Okay, thank you. And so one thing you highlighted is that you have a co-founder, and very recently in February, you've been featured in Euronews in one of their articles about the top 10 female scientists that everyone should know about today. And
I saw that article 3 months after it was published. So I was like, oh, that's nice.
And how was it? Because very often, actually, even if there's a lot of initiatives trying to empower women and trying to empower scientists, how was it in terms of experience, gender-based, and in terms of women empowerment? Because it's not very common to have 2 scientists starting a startup, and especially not 2 female scientists right now.
Well, quite honestly, we did not have that impression during our PhD at all, because, you know, at a PhD level, it's very equal. Like, we were 50% women, 50% men in the lab. So there, you didn't really feel it, and for us, it was not so odd to, you know, try to make a startup or create a company. And then going into the entrepreneurial world, it was quite different, quite honestly. Sometimes you ended up being the only woman in the room, and you're a bit like, what's wrong? But then again, I mean, you learn to deal with it. I mean, sometimes you do have that feeling of, you know, feeling a bit out of place, because obviously you look for people that are similar to you, and sometimes you end up in a room of middle-aged men. But it's fine. You get along, you have a topic to talk about, and I think the way of changing it is just having more women doing startups.
I hope so. So going more into the startup itself, and so SUN Bioscience. So what's your pitch? What's the problem you're trying to solve right now?
Yeah, so what we're bringing is small human tissues to test on. So instead of, you know, obviously there's animal models that sometimes don't translate into human biology, or the only way of really understanding how treatments work in a personalized manner is going into patients, and there's not really anything scalable to test on beforehand in a preclinical setting. So this is where we bring these organoids in. They're small tissues that you can grow from your stem cells. They basically expand to infinity. They don't change genetically, and they are functional. So bringing these tissues at scale to preclinical and clinical testing.
Okay, and sorry. So the product that you built isn't actually the cells themselves. It's not the process of the cells, but it's rather. I learned that it was called the Grid 3D, Grid 3D. And so, what is it exactly for someone who's non-initiated into scientific matters and biotechnology? So, to what can you compare it in more common terms?
Yeah. So there's different parts to the solution. So one part is purely hardware-based. It's small little plates, you know, a footprint of like this. And it has little molds inside that are made in a soft matter, so a gel, we call it hydrogel. And then the cells grow in there, basically, and very reproducibly at large scale, so really fit for screenings.
So this process, it's cruelty-free, because right now, most of the time, the test product, even if vegan is a tendency that is growing, But can we call your process vegan right now? Or cruelty-free?
It's a nice way of saying
yeah.
it. But, yeah, I guess. I actually heard that also recently. Somebody also called it vegan, so now I'm not so surprised anymore. But in general, yeah, we're going in that direction. So one thing that is for sure is that, you know, sourcing human cells so far was always a bit of a pain in the field. I mean, it's a bit of a macabre way of saying it, but very often they come from people who have had accidents. Their, you know, organs are not fit for transplantation. Then you take their cells for testing in a pharmaceutical setting. So you can imagine that's not very scalable, and maybe you would not call that vegan. But when now we can actually take small samples from a living patient and just expand that, like make a lot of cells out of them. So yeah, that's really the field that we live in now.
So what was the challenges you faced during the development of your startup from 2016 to nowadays? What were the key steps of your development?
Well, first, from becoming a scientist to becoming you know, somebody who understands business, that's a personal challenge. So it's a very different field that you have to adapt to, because very often you just think, I'm going to bring my solution, everybody's going to buy it, and the world is going to be a better place. Not necessarily always the case. Then, I mean, from our perspective, it was, you know, bringing something out of the lab that works, you know, on a regular small scale basis, to scaling that in a sense that it's a product that, you know, that can be bought off the shelf, that people order in large scale. So just the, you know, organization of the production part was demanding. We overestimated ourselves in some cases, but took longer. So usually it takes 2 times longer than what you initially anticipate. Also costs 2 times more. And you have to deal with these kind of challenges on a regular basis. What was really nice for us from the beginning is that we had we went out to clients very early on, got feedback from, you know, users, people that would buy that solution in the future, and that was very positive. So that's really what also kept us going. We had sales early on. Our sales are growing constantly over the past 3 years. So yeah.
Because your client is not the regular people in a supermarket. You're actually talking about big pharmaceutical company, right?
Yeah, so we're talking about scientists, both in you know, small R&D labs and the academics. Those were our first clients. But now we're shifting more and more towards large companies that do large-scale screenings. Yeah.
So, how big is this market right now? And do you have an idea, maybe a number?
Well, it's big, you know, because the thing is, we're not just talking about these plastic hydrogel-based technologies, but we're talking everything that is done on it with it. So we're not just selling hardwares, we're selling services where we're creating these 3D tissue models for clients. We're talking about screening campaigns, you know, understanding which compounds work how on these tissue models. And we're also involved in a clinical pilot for, you know, understanding in a patient-specific matter how treatments work, because I can create these organoids from me, I can create them from you, I can create them from anyone here. And if you have a disease, we can actually understand what medication works for you and what not. So the market is big.
Recently, not that recently actually, in 2017, you recruited, you brought for my English. You brought in 2017, someone called Jurian van der Over.
Complicated name.
Yeah, and as a chief financial officer.
Right.
And just before you talked about how it was to switch to a business thinking way. So how can you compare it? What was it? How was this decision of bringing someone else into your baby to help it grow? How was the learning process and the transformation process personally and for the startup? Yeah,
so there's 2 things to consider. I mean, on the one hand, it's, you know, you take some time to learn what you don't know. I've studied 10 years how to grow stem cells, and sometimes still we're struggling, you know. Then on the financial and business side, I mean, yeah, you can take 10 years to learn it, or you bring someone on who has that expertise, and Jeroen is actually that. So he did his own successful company in the Netherlands, even though it's a completely different field. Some of the things definitely overlap. He knows how to scale a business, he knows how to make it successful, how to sell it. So, that helps tremendously talking to clients, especially in terms of contracting, business development. So he is teaching us how to do business, and we teach him how to do stem cell cultures. So it's a give and take.
Wonderful. Because a lot of time we hear that it doesn't go that way. Very often the people are really reluctant to bring in some new people at such position in such an early stage. So what was it in terms of the recruitment process? How did you pick this person to be your next CFO?
Well, he was actually, he happened to be one of our mentors in, the CTI environment. We got along really well with him. We worked with him for 3 months on a pitch competition. We felt like, mentally we connected very well. Like we're kind of very similar, and he fits very well in the team. And then we just took him on. Like we asked him, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm bored. I'll do it."
Perfect. So switching to the next, what are your objectives in terms of development for your company in the few months to come and the few years to come?
Yeah, so now that we're starting to have these really big contracts with the pharma companies in the Basel region, one of the major things is scaling the team according to the contracts that are coming in. So one big thing that has been going on for a couple of months already is fundraising. We're in the middle of our Series A, trying to find the right investors that fit the team, because we're not really pressured to take someone on immediately, because we have revenues coming in, so that helps in picking and choosing the right investors. But then again, you also want to speed up a bit, because you cannot, we grow, but we grow slow, and we would like to just speed that up a bit. Then there's many developments in our company. So obviously we have the hardwares, but the cells come with it. So a lot of our clients actually have a hard time sourcing these cells, because they're considered the big bad wolf, you can call them. Not many people trust the pharma industry, sometimes with reason, but they still make the drugs. And basically we want to provide them an ethical way of sourcing organoids for making better drugs in the future.
Okay. So right now the very reason we're here is that because you're a finalist of the Prix Stratégis organized by DHEE, and so what motivated you going to this competition that is happening here?
Well, first of all, someone reached out to us and was like, why don't you try this? It's a really nice local competition. So we're like, okay, fine. I think it was, what we also want to strengthen is, a bit the entrepreneurial environment here in the region. So this is always a nice way of doing that. Then what was great is just the process was nice. So, having the student teams come in, explaining your business it was quite a harsh session in the middle of summer. It was really hot. We were in a room just talking for 2 hours, I think. That was really nice, and just also, getting the question feedback from a total outside perspective sometimes is really good. So that was just nice, because we also want to, motivate other people to do what we're doing. And finally, the jury, when we actually had the pitch, it was also a very interactive pitch with not enough time, and with some of them we still have discussions now, so it's great. Yeah.
Okay, and so what did you learn from the Prix Stratégis, if you learned anything in terms of experience on how it has gone? So what would be the main adjective to qualify this experience of the Prix Stratégis?
Yeah, it's really, formulating our business. Sometimes it's a bit hard in terms of the different parts that we're working on. So it's really the communication part. It's it's nice to give that on a, we talk to scientists, Johan talks to high business people, but being able to talk to that to a rather, intermediate kind of person population. It's like, now I'm talking like a scientist again. But yeah, being able to communicate that to anyone, because that's also something that we need for the future, because these, these stem cell samples, we don't only want to make them from scientists or business people, but we want to kind of provide them from anyone in the world, and kind of being able to communicate that is really important.
Okay, thank you. And so, what would a victory at the finale means to you for the Prix Stratégis?
I mean, it's always really a validation of what you're doing. You know, it's just a little push forward. It will help us. It will help us develop a few things right in the coming months before the investment comes in. So it helps us move a bit faster in some sense. And yeah, it's just another way of communicating what we're doing. You know, it's sometimes you're a bit stuck in your own world, so having the opportunity to speak to a larger community outside of what you have, because we know we're not connected to the HEC groups, so that is helping just to raise awareness. So.
Okay, one last word, maybe something that we didn't mention and that you would like to speak about.
That's a tough one. I was not prepared for that one. What would I like to talk about? Well, now you caught me. That's not fair.
If you have one advice, maybe.
If I have one advice, well, I mean, that's when we talk to anybody. You know, we form our little entrepreneurial environments in the region. We also have a little group in Zurich with life science entrepreneurs where we're helping each other out. It's just whenever you have the chance to do it, just do it. Especially when you're young, you know, it becomes harder when you want to sleep sometimes. It's, I've seen it with other friends who, you know, have family and then want to make a startup. It's complicated. So when you're young, you have the chance to do it. It's a great way of, you know, building you personally, building what you know, jumping into the cold water from. I thought I knew everything at my PhD. After my PhD, I was like, I'm a great scientist, perfect. It's like, can do anything in the world. It's a harsher learning experience that's not true, and it helps you build yourself really. It builds confidence. It builds how you understand the world, because now you look at everything. You know, it's like, how is that even a product? How does that work? How is that feasible? You know, in a business sense. So you look at the world in different ways, and yeah, that's just great.
Thank you very much for being here, for accepting doing this interview. Merci à tous de votre attention, et c'était une interview très intéressante avec Sylke de SUN Bioscience. On vous retrouve très bientôt, et notamment le 15 septembre à la cérémonie de clôture pour la finale du Prix Stratégis au Musée Olympique de Lausanne. N'hésitez pas à nous suivre sur les réseaux sociaux, Instagram, Facebook et LinkedIn.